as we look and stare into the abyss. You never know what's staring back at you. It's coming.
All these voices.
Don't worry, Sweet. The phone we heard alone.
We had tons of activity, including a demon attack that called JC, the founder of Shadows Pit Paranormal, to puke all over the place like projectile vomit. It was insane, and he got scratched on the neck. We captured a disembodied face that was screaming, and we also captured a couple different full-body apparitions, which was badass. Now, Baba Yaga was a Slavic witch, but she was also a supernatural guardian. And basically what she did was beat back the forces of evil from the realm of the dead, made a deal with a bunch of witches in the woods in Armenia. She sold her soul, a nasty creature that I have actually had a run-in with myself. The bastard scratched the hell out of my car and jumped on it. It was a mess. I tell the story in the show.
It's just the ghost of you and me. It's just the smoking gasoline. It's just the ghost of you and me. Of you and me. Don't let them take you away.
They say staring in the abyss.
Don't let them bring you down inside. It's just the mirrors in
I'm
your
saying
mind. Don't let them bring
I
you
already am lost.
down.
Staring into the abyss. Remember, there might be something staring back. Come get awesome.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Staring into the Abyss. I am your host, horror author James Hershey Jr., and with me as always, my partner in crime and co-host, old boy James Ash. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing pretty good. How's everybody this evening?
Tonight's episode is going to be a fun one. I know I say that a lot, but this is going to be fun because old boy brought this to my attention a week or two ago. He started sending me these videos that he was finding on YouTube about Chernobyl, and it's really popular right now because you have the TV series that's out and it's kind of making a resurgence. So people are capitalizing on that. You're getting a lot of these videos going up on YouTube, and you're getting a lot of these people that are talking about it. What the videos revolved around were the mutations, and they're making it look like there's these monsters at Chernobyl. It's this horrible, horrible thing. These monstrous creatures are slithering around and they're going to get you. It's meant to scare you and to freak you out. It's simply not the case. I mean, you have a lot of BS that's floating around about this. So your boys here at Staring in the Abyss, what we're going to do is we're going to try to separate the fact from the fiction and tell you what's actually going on at Chernobyl, why it's going on, and what is BS, basically. A lot of this stuff is garbage. Now, that is not to say that there is nothing paranormal at Chernobyl, and I'll get into that later. For those that don't know, Chernobyl was a nuclear power plant in Russia. And in 1986, there was one hell of an accident. And it's kind of, in my mind, the ultimate oopsie. You know, it's the ultimate Homer Simpson don't moment. Because it was an intentional accident, but they didn't intend it to be an accident. I know that sounds crazy. I'll explain. Basically, what they wanted to do is they wanted to simulate a power outage. It was a drill that they were doing, and they wanted to simulate that the power had went out, and they were going to bring it back on as a test, you know, to show how to deal with that situation, to train and all that kind of stuff. So they turned it off, and it blew up. Now, the reason it blew up is because in reactor 4, the graphite moderator was actually exposed to air, and that caused it to ignite, and that shot like radioactive fallout all across the area. I mean, it's a hell of a big area that was just coated. Now, they got lucky because the wind was blowing in such a way that it enabled a lot of people to escape. So it wasn't as bad as it could have been, but there's a big area there now that people can't live in, basically. And what you have is you have the animal life there is still there, but you have mutations that are going on. The videos would have you believe that what happens is the radioactive fallout falls onto the animal, and then like the toxic Avenger, it falls to the ground and sizzles and bubbles and twists all up like a pretzel, and then a monster comes out. That's not how it works at all. Basically, the way this works, and I'm going to try to explain this so that everybody can understand. The energy from the radiation will get into the person or the animal, and it will actually damage or break the DNA molecules. Now, if the damage is severe enough, if it messes up enough DNA molecules, then the cells can't replicate. The way that you keep on living is your cells are continuously dying off, but they're continuously replicating themselves, making new cells, and rebuilding your body day after day. If enough damage is done, and the damage is severe enough, then the cells will not be able to replicate anymore, and then the animal dies or the person dies. Now, sometimes the damage is severe, but it's not severe enough to kill you. When that happens, the DNA can repair itself. But in that situation, what you have are mutations. Now, and this is a very, very important piece here. When you're talking about a living creature that's already alive, breathing, walking around, eating and pooping and doing the whole nine, when you have a mutation in a living creature, that mutated DNA will produce tumors. And it will cause the animal to not be able to reproduce, usually. Not always, but usually it makes them sterile. Sometimes it doesn't. But it always produces tumors, cancers, and that will eventually kill the animal. If that mutation occurs in the cells in the reproductive system, the sperm cells, the egg cells, that will usually result in what they call a non-viable embryo. What that means is it cannot become a baby animal. Now, sometimes when this occurs, it does not become a non-viable embryo. Sometimes the mutation is not severe enough to be non-viable. It is just severe enough to cause mutations in the DNA. Now, this DNA belongs to an animal that is not yet formed or born. So what that does is it alters the forming of that animal. It alters the genetic coding of that animal, so you get genetic mutations. Instead of mutations that are tumors, you will have weird stuff start coming out. So you might have an animal born with 2 heads, or with 3 ears, or with only 1 eye, or 2 tails, or 6 legs, or whatever. It's going to be weird stuff like that. Now, the majority of the time when that happens, the animal does not live more than an hour or 2, usually. Sometimes the mutation is not severe enough to kill the animal. It can survive, and it does survive. So then you have these animals running around that are kind of weird, and they have multiple legs, multiple ears, multiple heads, all kinds of weird things. Sometimes the mutations are internal, and you don't even know it. You can't even tell. The other very, very interesting thing that happens is that radiation is actually passed on to the baby. So that baby carries around the radiation in its body, in its DNA, and when it reproduces, there's radiation there as well. This is a way that these mutations are actually spreading. It's a way that the fallout zone is actually widening. This is happening especially in the wolves, because the wolves of Chernobyl, for whatever reason, are very, very resilient, and they're not being killed off as much as the other animals by the radiation. The rate of survivability for their offspring is much higher. So they're actually able to survive with this radiation. And they're going out into other parts of the Soviet Union and Europe and all over the place where they can reach, and they're mating with other wolves. And they are producing offspring that are radioactive, which is really, really interesting. This will cause mutations also down the line. Now, with each generation, the amount of radiation will be less. There's multiple reasons for that. The first reason, obviously, is that you're diluting it as you go because only one of the parents is radioactive. So you're diluting that amount anyway. The second reason is as time passes, those radioactive isotopes begin to break down and change, and they become not as dangerous. So that's the first bit. Now you have a whole lot of these things saying these creatures are monsters and that they're dangerous and that they're scary and all this stuff. And honestly, that's simply not true. What you have are not monsters. You don't have creatures that are supernatural. You don't have creatures that are bent on harming you any more than they ordinarily would be for that species. So, in other words, if you have a wolf that is mutated, it is no more likely to eat your ass than a normal wolf would eat your ass. Now, a normal wolf will eat you because they hunt in packs, and if you are dumb enough to be out there by yourself without a weapon, you are most likely going to end up being dinner if you're out there long enough. If you have a gun, that levels the playing field quite substantially. A mutated wolf, no different. Its behavior is going to be the same for the most part. Now, some of the severe mutations in some of the other animals cause behavioral changes, but that's simply because their outlook on the world is different. So if you're born with only one eye instead of two, your depth perception is going to suck. You're not going to see as well as you would with two eyes, so your behavior is going to be different. That just stands to reason. Different mutations cause different things, but they do not cause these animals to become monstrous creatures that want to murder you. That's simply nonsense. It's clickbait. It's meant to make you want to watch that video. Oh, I got to see this video. It's nonsense. Now, I said that does not mean that there is nothing paranormal going on at Chernobyl. Chernobyl does have a paranormal past. We did an episode on the Mothman where we talked about all the different Mothman sightings, and Chernobyl was one of them. A couple weeks before the reactor blew, I think all the way up to a month before, you had sightings of the Mothman flying around plant and flying around the town next to the plant. The Mothman, as everybody knows, shows up for a lot of these things. Now, the Chernobyl disaster happened on April 26 in 1986. In the days prior to it, right before it, like about a week, I think it was, right before the explosion, they were having a lot of these sightings of the Mothman. But like I said before, it started about a month ahead of time to where they would see one or two a week. But then days before, it was really picking up. And that's the pattern that seems to happen with these Mothman sightings, is it'll start off before, about a month, month and a half, 2 months before the thing happens, whatever the event is, and you'll start seeing the Mothman every now and again. And then as it gets closer to the time of the disaster, the sightings pick up a lot, and you will see it a lot. And the Mothman is a really, really interesting phenomenon because you had the one in West Virginia. That was in 1966 in Clinton, West Virginia, is when they started having these sightings before the Point Pleasant bridge collapse. So it was around the area, but it wasn't right at the area. And they had multiple sightings, and it started moving in closer, almost like it was bullseyeing in on where the disaster was going to happen. And then right before the disaster, it picked up hot and heavy. You had the same thing happen in New York for 9/11. Before 9/11, there was a lot of Mothman sightings. And you would have one or two a week for a couple months before where they would see the Mothman up in the air around the towers. And then a couple days before the planes hit the towers on 9/11, we were getting reports of the Mothman actually perching on top of the Twin Towers. And you were having multiple sightings happening right before that. You had the same thing happen in Mexico. They had a big swine flu outbreak that happened in Mexico in 2009. And that was, interestingly enough, in that area that we talked about last week when we were talking about the zone of silence. Remember I was saying it was in Chihuahua, down in that area? This is where that swine flu outbreak happened, was in Chihuahua. It was a little town called La Junta. And that happened in 2009 where there was a massive outbreak of swine flu and a lot of people died. And then you also had the I-35 bridge collapse in Minnesota. That happened in 2007. Same exact pattern. You had a couple sightings of the Mothman, and then you had, right before the collapse, a lot of sightings really close together. I spent time trying to figure out if there was a certain amount of time that passed between these sightings. You know, is it like a 20-year thing? Is it a 15-year thing? Is it a regularly spaced thing? At first I thought it might be because you had the thing in the 60s, right? That happened in 66 is when the sightings started happening. But the bridge didn't actually collapse in Point Pleasant until 67. And then you had Chernobyl happen, and that was in 86, 87. So that seemed to be like a 20-year period. And I thought, maybe it's an every 20 years thing, but it doesn't fit because the next one would be 2006, but you had it happen on 9/11 in 2001. So it was ahead of schedule. And then you had it happen in 2007. Very, very interesting. So I haven't been able to exactly figure out the spacing, the times. Maybe there isn't a time spacing at all. Maybe that's just my mind wanting there to be a spacing. But interestingly enough, there is another sighting of the Mothman that nobody really talks about because it's not widely accepted as an actual Mothman sighting. But there was an event that took place in the 1920s, and people called it the Man Dragon. It was in 1926, and there was a dam that burst in this town in China. I can't pronounce it. It's like Zhanti Dam in China. And 15,000 people got killed that were living in the villages around there when the dam burst. It was like 40 billion gallons of water just poured through this dam and just destroyed everything in its path. But interestingly enough, in the days before, the villagers were reporting seeing a dark, sinister figure that looked like a man, but was flying around like a giant bird all around the dam. They said that they had started seeing it about a month and a half before, but it was only a few sightings. But then the couple days before the dam burst, they started seeing it every day. Multiple people were reporting this. And then they had the dam burst. So I'm thinking that the actual first one that we have on record was probably this dam bursting in China in 1926. I think that might actually be the first appearance of the Mothman. So then if you look at that, if you count that as a Mothman sighting, okay, just for the sake of argument here, because it fits, 1926, and then you got 1966, that's 40 years. And then 66 to 86, that's 20 years. And then 86 to 2001 is like 15 years. So it seems to me like the spacing is getting smaller than 2001 to 2007. And then they also had Mothman sighting at the Fukushima plant that blew in Japan recently. And that was in, I think, 2011. So it's getting closer and closer. You know, it went from 2001 to 2007 is 6 years. 2007 to 2011 is 4 years. To me, that's an interesting pattern. It's less and less time in between these things now. Now, what I'm wondering is there actually less time in between when the Mothman is showing up? Or is it just now we kind of know what we're looking for? And with the internet and with the ability that we have to communicate with each other all over the globe at any time, more people are reporting this stuff and we're getting a better picture of what's going on. So in other words, is it that he's only showing up every so often and that time in between is getting smaller? Or is it he shows up all the time and we're just noticing it more now? That's what I wonder. So I've kind of gone way off topic from Chernobyl. So I'm going to throw over to Old Boy. He's going to talk about Chernobyl a little bit. And if he wants to chime in on the Mothman thing, he can do that too, because that kind of ties into Chernobyl as well.
And thank you, brother. Yeah, I wanted to do Chernobyl for a while, and I'm glad you kind of brought up the whole Mothman thing, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But yeah, I want to get to Chernobyl. I wanted to do this for a couple months because like he said, the TV show's out, And, you know, they made a movie, that Chernobyl Diaries or whatever, and that was a crazy movie. But there's a lot of talk and stuff on YouTube, like you said, and it's getting popular again, you know, because it's been 33, 34 years since that happened in Chernobyl, Russia. And one thing that he was talking about, the animals get mutate like the wolves, and they're, you know, they actually don't die. They're just mutating and getting bigger. And they're going to, you know, like you said, outside of Russia, Europe, and stuff like that. I read about that one. That one's really interesting. Now, the one thing that is happening in Chernobyl is that the catfish and the giant fish, they're in the cooling tanks. See, when it hit, people died. So they couldn't just go in there and take them out, because radiation doesn't just go away. It's still bad there. It's been 30-something years, and it's still bad. There was dead bodies that had fell in the lake, or this. There was like a river next to the cooling tanks, and they had fell in there, and some of the fish started. That was how they ate. They ate other fish too, but they are starting to get bigger. That's one thing that's true that's going on, that the fish are getting really big. They actually showed the one guy throwing stuff in there now, and it is huge, a huge 10, 15-foot catfish, and they're mutating. So that's one thing that did happen. There is some animals, like the one it shows there's like, if you guys can go on YouTube, there shows this, I don't know what it is, like a moose with no head, or the head's shrunk in. That's on video. I mean, the thing has no head on it, and they said it's real. Finding weird looking fish like that one, like it had like all these different legs and stuff like that. It showed like this weird creature looking fish. I don't believe that, like James. I think that's a joke. I think people, you know, they wanted to get on TV, and they made like this weird looking creature, and the guy's sitting there touching it, has like a man's like jaw, and it said, "Oh, look at this monster they found." You know, I believe that. Like, I don't believe that existed. I think that's homemade. Now, they did show some kind of, like, he was getting into the extraterrestrial and the paranormal, is they showed like aliens and stuff that come there, like with the Mothman thing. And like I said, I'll get into Mothman in a minute. Is that could be true, because, you know, you never know, that they want to see what happened. Maybe the aliens are studying how stupid we were with this another disaster, because you know what happened in Tokyo a couple years ago, or Japan, not Tokyo, but in Japan, with the nuclear power plants there. So I believe some of these animals do get mutated. I think that it, like you said, different limbs, they can't reproduce, or they're deformed. That's not a monster. That's just a mutation from like you said, from the gamma rays from the nuclear, you know, disaster. You know, there's a lot of radioactive material there still. There's still people who's crazy enough to go in there, and you're not even supposed to. They're selling parts of I saw this funny thing they showed on I think it was on eBay. Somebody had stole a battery or something from a car, and other stuff. It's like stones and rocks and like from the buildings there, because it's like a big city. It's abandoned because of this radiation, and they were selling it on eBay. And I'm like, why the hell would you buy that? Because it has radiation anyway. But I wouldn't believe it anyway, because it's probably some scam. We all know how eBay works. People will say, "Oh yeah, I got this for the great deal," and then you'll get it, and it's like there's nothing in it. I mean, I use eBay. I've never had that happen, but one time I got something that was broke. But most of the time, I'll see people getting like PlayStations are not in there. It's like rocks. So I wouldn't trust anything. That's why, I mean, I want to do the debit box thing, guys, to get off subject. But I'm not going to trust eBay that somebody just made. I could, you know, handmade something, threw a bunch of dirt in there and you know, other crap in there, and said, "Oh yeah, here you go. Here's a story behind it." Anybody could do that. That's why I wouldn't buy anything like that from eBay, especially a car battery. And even if it was from Chernobyl, why would you want to buy it? It's radioactive. People don't realize you can't have that around you. You'll get sick. Yeah, especially like, I don't know, James didn't mention about what, you know, with Chernobyl, that big sludge that it's called the elephant's foot. It kind of looks like an elephant's foot, and it's down, still burning through the cement, 20 like pounds of cement, and it's still going through it. It's still, they showed pictures of it, like the guy in the radiation suit who died like a year later, taking a picture of this thing like 10, 15 feet away. It ended up killing him, but it's like a big thing of sludge, and it looks like an elephant foot, and it's still going through the floor now. It's going to keep eating through the ground. It doesn't go away. It's just sludge, and and radioactive material that mixed in with the cement and everything, and it went through rocks and everything. It's burning right through, and it's still doing it. It's going like that down in Tokyo and Japan too. This stuff doesn't go away. This still leaking in the ocean. That's why you're having mutated fish and stuff like that. It doesn't just go and on the ground and just goes washes away. No, it goes into the ocean all over the world. So remember that, guys, especially with what happened in Chernobyl. This didn't just stay there. It went all over Europe. So some of this radiation is still there, just like they were doing in Nevada with the special bombs in Tokyo when we dropped it on Hiroshima. That didn't just go away. That's still radiated there. Radiation doesn't just go away. Eventually it does. Eventually, like hundreds of years later, like Chernobyl, in about 100 years, you'll be able to live there. But that's why you're having these things run around and like they're making movies with like zombies or mutants or eating people. I mean, I saw that one video, but it was from a movie. It shows them tearing apart somebody and they're like infrared in the helicopter in Russia, and it's all in Russia, and it's like mutants, and you could tell it's like that's from a movie or something. It's a joke, but that's what the Chernobyl movie was back in, I think it was like in early 2012, 10 somewhere. I'd never seen all of it. I watched it and it got boring. There's just another people going around getting eaten and zombie stuff or mutant whatever or cannibals. So I didn't really get involved in that. But Chernobyl is something I've always been interested in because I see like what could really happen in real life. This could really happen, guys. And it becomes like a dead city. And no one goes there. And it wasn't just a little town. It was a big city. And it's nothing there. You'll see buses, houses, people left their houses, hurried up and evacuated. People had died. They just left the bodies there. So the animals started, where do you think they're going to get food? They start eating that and whatever else died from the radiation. So it goes into their body. So they get that stuff anyway. That's all they have. You get mutated. You get, I mean, you're not like, like he said, you don't drive like Godzilla. You guys know Godzilla's out. That's a good point because that's about radioactivity. They've changed it now. It's like Godzilla saves the world, but there's certain monsters who eat radioactivity and got huge. Like they just got giant, like Kong. And the original Godzilla was from that. It was from the bomb when America attacked, Japan, and that was what happened. The radiation made a giant Godzilla. It came back. It's basically nature coming back for revenge for us dropping that bomb. And Godzilla was the creature for nature's side, and you saw what happened with those movies. Now he's, one of the greatest monster movies of all time. But he was getting into the Mothman thing, and they said, yeah, they saw Mothman there, and then that happened. Well, again, Mothman gets seen, and something bad happens after. That's why it makes me wonder, is Mothman some kind of warning? Is he alien, or is it something kind of demon that gets off on, or gives you a warning, or it goes there and then something bad happens? Maybe that's what it is. When it shows up, then a couple days later, like the bridge fell in West Virginia, or I think it's West Virginia, I don't remember. But that happened, something bad there. And like I said, there's this thing there to cause havoc. Maybe that's what happened. Maybe it caused that, and it gained all the deaths from it, and it feeds off of it. Or is it just some kind of omen? Or is it really just a real creature, and it happens to come? Because they've seen it other times, not just this time. So that's a good one too. He looks like an owl. So that mean Mothman. I don't know. That's another thing. I don't know why they keep calling him Mothman, because some people say he kind of looks like a moth, but then that was another thing with he looks like an owl. So it's kind of funny that they keep calling him Mothman. But it's funny he showed up in Chernobyl and look what happens, and they seen him again. So all I'm saying is radioactivity can make you mutate. Not like they do on TV where they're showing, like the hills of ice. And it could do mutations like that. You can get messed up in the head and get another arm or something. But some of the stuff you see on YouTube, getting back to the point about Chernobyl, is not true. Like walking giant lizards or something. I saw something about that. There's a giant lizard. They show it running across and it just disappears. And I'm like, and they say it's a lizard man or an alien. I don't believe that. I kind of agree with James. I think some of this has been exaggerated so much, and Hollywood got involved like they always do, and now people are, everybody wants to make a buck on paranormal or aliens or any kind of creatures and cryptozoology. So everybody's out saying, "Oh, there's a monster," and it's probably something they homemade made and made the creature. Because right now you can make stuff like that. There's people who know how to do that. I have friends that know how to make something look like it's real, like a creature, a monster, or something. So it's not impossible, especially with camera work and what you can do with CGI. So I get it, and this is where I'm actually kind of agree with people. Some of this is fake, but the one where the moose is running, it looks like a moose. It has no head. It's weird. That's real. I've even seen so much about that. That's really something. So that's probably a mutation, a birth defect, or something that the mutation does, because that can make you have birth defects. So yes, James, I do agree with you. I think some of this is exaggerated, but I do believe some of these, like the fish and stuff, did get mutated. They showed videos of the fish and some of the animals, but the wolf thing, that's cool because we're into the whole cryptozoology, and maybe what's happened is throughout where people are seeing this dog man thing, and then you see this giant wolf. Well, maybe over the years one of these wolves got captured or taken over to America and bred with one of these wolves here, and now this is why we have these giant wolves, and they have pictures of these giant wolves running around out here too, especially there in Russia and Europe now. So you never know. Somebody could have brought a couple of these over. We don't even know, and let them loose up in Canada or something. And they could have bred with these and made giant wolves. So that's what I think about that. Go ahead, James.
Yeah, the mutations are going to take place in the next generation. The animals that are exposed to the radiation initially, the only mutations that are going to happen to them are tumors and cancers. It's going to kill them. The mutations take place in the following generations because, like I was saying earlier, the sperm and the egg get radiated, and then it changes the DNA. It changes the genetic code. So it grows a different thing than it was originally going to grow. That's how the mutations work. As far as the fish go, I don't think that is necessarily a product of radiation. Catfish, for example, can get very, very big. It is not unusual to have a 20-foot catfish if the area is big enough. Catfish can tolerate a whole lot of pollution as well because they are bottom-dwelling fish. They eat the garbage off the bottom of the river or the lake or whatever they're in. So their body is used to handling the nastier things. Now, granted, radiation a lot nastier than ordinary things it would eat. It probably really messed up the initial catfish that first got irradiated. But following generations, there might be a little bit larger than normal. That might be a mutation that took place. But it's not out of the realm of possibility to have catfish the size of the catfish that are at Chernobyl. I'll tell you an interesting story. I live in the mountains of Virginia. I have said this before. And one thing you will find when you live in the mountains, here in Virginia and in West Virginia as well, and I'm sure you find this also in other areas that are mountainous, is you have quarries. Now, what a quarry is, for those that don't know, is an area where they come in and they mine for rock. They get gravel out of there, they get quartz out of there, they do coal, they do all kinds of things. What you're left with is a very, very large hole. Now, you can't just have a gigantic hole in the middle of the woods, because what happens is people will walk along, not watch where they're going, they fall in the giant hole, and they die. So what they do is they fill in these giant quarries, when they're done with them, with water. So instead of having a big hole, you have a man-made lake, is what happens. And they're very, very deep. Now, a lot of times, in the old days, what they would do is, as they were digging these quarries, you have machinery that breaks. And in a lot of the quarries around here, down at the very bottom, you will find old machinery. You'll find old dozers and stuff like that that broke down and weren't worth anything anymore. And they just simply left them there. And you'll also find like refrigerators and all kinds of crap like that that people just kind of chuck in. But these holes go hundreds of feet deep, and they're very big. We have one right over here by where I live that used to be an old rock quarry. They finished with it, and they moved the quarry somewhere else, which is not too far away from here, but still in the area, but not that location anymore. They filled that quarry in with water. So now it is a lake. They stocked it with fish, and now people fish there sometimes. They try to keep you out of there because it's a little bit dangerous, but one thing about us mountain people, we don't listen too well. We don't follow rules or laws very well, so we sneak through the woods and we go there and we fish. Now, another thing you can do at that quarry, because it is a secluded area surrounded by woods, is you can take pretty young ladies there to skinny dip and do things like that. And I myself have partaken in that particular pastime quite a bit when I was younger. So I frequented this particular quarry quite a bit. I took several different ladies down there, and we had nice little days. We had picnics. We didn't actually have picnics. We would go swimming and do things that young people do. But also, I would go down there and go fishing because I enjoy fishing. There's also a sheer rock wall there that goes about 150 feet straight up. And I used to love when I was younger to go and free climb that with no ropes or nothing. I would just start at the bottom and climb up to the top because you get up to the top and you can walk over to where the road is. I wouldn't do it now because I'd probably die because I'm old and I don't have the kind of strength I used to have. But I enjoyed it quite a bit when I was younger. But anyway, back to the story. I used to go there and swim with the ladies. And in the area where I used to swim with the ladies all the time, I saw something when I was fishing that caused me to never again go swimming in this quarry. I went down there fishing, and I was casting out and reeling, and I was using artificial bait. I believe it was probably a rubber crayfish or something like that, most likely. So I would cast out and I'd reel it in slowly and catch fish. And sometimes you don't catch fish. Sometimes you just catch your bait and you throw it back out again. On one of these times when I'm reeling this thing in, I notice a very large shadow coming from down deeper. And it's heading towards my bait. Now at first I think, cool. That's a big ass fish, man. I'm going to get me a good fish. This is going to be really awesome. So, you get all excited, your muscles tense up, you're ready to catch that giant fish. So I keep cranking real slow on the reel there, and I'm waiting for this thing to get closer and hoping that it'll come up and take a bite at my lure. Well, usually what happens is it looks like it's very, very large when you first see it underneath. But as it gets closer, it gets smaller, and by the time it gets up to your bait, you notice you might have a decent sized fish, but it's usually not a gigantic monster fish. Sometimes it's a good fish, but it's not a great fish, usually. But as this thing approached my lure and got closer, it did not get a whole lot smaller. It was still very, very, very big. And I watched this thing as I'm reeling my lure in, following the lure. It had now gotten up to the level to where it was around the same depth as my lure was, and I could see it very plainly. And I could see that it was a really, really big catfish, and it was following my lure. Now at this point in my mind, it switched from, cool, man, I'm going to catch this giant fish, to, oh, hell, man, I'm going to catch this giant fish. That's not a good thing. It wasn't, oh, yes, I can't wait, he's going to bite it. It's, oh, my God, he's going to bite it. So I started reeling much faster because I did not want this thing to bite my lure because it was huge. This fish, and I swear to you, this fish looked like it could have eaten me if it had wanted to. I could have probably fit in this thing's mouth. I'm 6'5", 300 pounds. I could have fit in this fish's mouth. He could have swallowed me whole. It was that large. And it was following my little crayfish bait. So I cranked the hell out of my reel to get that thing in quick, and I managed to get it in before it bit. It swam up, turned around, went straight back down, and I never saw it again. But seeing how large that catfish was, and realizing that it could have eaten me had it wanted to, I decided that the best idea was to never again go swimming in that particular quarry. Now I wondered to myself, how is this gigantic monster fish here? I didn't realize that they got that big. I'd never seen a fish that large unless it was in the ocean. So I started looking into it a little bit, reading up on it, because that's what I do. And I learned that a lot of these fish will grow to the size of their environment. So if you have a fish that's in a small river system that's not very deep, it will only reach a certain size and it won't grow any larger. But if you take that same fish and you put it in a very deep water lake, it can get a lot bigger. They've had sightings of catfish, like I said, 15, 20 feet on record. The one I saw had to be that, at least. It was enough to scare me, enough not to get back in that water. And I don't scare easy. I'm not afraid of a lot in this world. You know, I'll go toe-to-toe and stand and fight with any creature on the planet. I'm not afraid of any of them. But I will not mess with a shark. You're not going to get me in the water fighting a shark or a giant catfish or any kind of thing like that, because you can't fight in the water. Your fists don't move right, your legs don't move right. You punch, you end up punching like a little girl. You don't have no power behind it because you can't get no speed. I'm not going to win that fight ever. I'm going to lose every single time. So I don't mess around with things in the water. And this catfish was big enough that I was not going to mess around in that water ever again. I tell you that story to illustrate the point that it is not unusual to see, especially catfish, get that size. So to me, that does not necessarily mean that that mutation is caused by the radiation. Now, could it have an effect on the offspring of the fish? Absolutely. Could it cause them to be a little bit larger? Absolutely. I think that's probably the case with these wolves, because one of the mutations that they're seeing in the wolves is that they are a lot bigger than they ordinarily were. They're not necessarily any more aggressive, because wolves are really aggressive anyway when they want to be, but they are bigger than the ordinary wolves. That is something that multiple different reputable sources have documented. So we see there that radiation can have that effect through mutation. I believe that. Now, like I said, the original wolves that were irradiated, that didn't happen to them. They got tumors and died, most likely. That's pretty much what happens to every living thing when it's introduced to high levels of radiation, is you end up with tumors. And it's kind of funny because we use radiation to fight cancer. We use radiation to kill tumors because that's what it does, is it kills living cells. But the byproduct of that is cancer. So it's kind of funny that you go get radiation to kill the cancer tumor, but that's going to end up probably causing cancer later in life anyway. So, I don't know. I don't think that radiation and chemotherapy are the best ideas in the world. I think that God has given us everything that we need to be healthy. It's all through diet. You know, there's a lot of foods on this planet that God gave us for free that can cure all these things. And you're seeing more and more stuff come out about that every day. So, with that being said, I want to throw back over to Old Boy and see if he has anything else to say about Chernobyl before we wrap up.
Thank you again, brother. Exactly what I was enjoying that story you told me about that catfish. Well, see, where they're at, there's a giant river there too, and goes with this pool, these draining pools that they had for for the cooling tanks, and they're huge. So, like James said, these catfishes are going to get bigger in Chernobyl because there's unlimited water. Because I guess they broke in through the river, so they're going to get bigger. Like they showed in like Brazil and stuff, they get like 20, 24 feet. I think the biggest one was like 24 feet, 23 feet in South America somewhere. And in Asia, they get like 20 feet. Even here in America, they said they get about 15 to 20 feet. I've seen it. Noodling's a very popular thing. And you'll see these guys get like 6-7 foot catfish easily. So I believe that James's story is true because I've seen probably not 20, 15 foot, but I've seen about a 10, 15 foot one before in the lake up in Mammoth. A couple of them. There's a lake. There's a lot of lakes actually up north. And I was at I don't remember. I think it was Gull Lake or June Lake, and I seen this giant. And this thing was, I was probably like 11, 10, and I was about 5.5 feet tall. Then I'm 6 foot, 265 pounds. So I'm a pretty big guy myself. And I seen this thing was huge. And my dad at the time was fishing too. He's 6'3.5". He was 350 pounds. He is 350, 40 pounds somewhere. He was a big dude. And he wasn't fat. He was just big, like James. And I just remember this thing was bigger than my dad, long-wise. And that's just how they grow there. Because people, some of these lakes are huge. They just throw stuff. And then you got people who throw, bread in there, and they eat other fish, and they eat people's bait. That's one thing that I hate about catfish. Anyway, you got to be careful. They'll steal your fish or your bait. So when you're reeling in, not to get off subject, but if you ever fish, that can happen. So that's what James was talking about, is trying to eat his bait. It does that. Those are what those are known for. They're bottom feeders, so they scavenge for anything. So they were trying to steal his food, so no surprise there. So other than that, with the Chernobyl thing, I'm glad we got to do it. We haven't done something like this one for a while. It isn't just about monsters and, something ghost, or we did something different now with mutations and something that really did happen, a tragedy, something a little bit different. I hope you guys enjoyed it because it's something I wanted to do because we're trying to do different stuff all the time. It isn't just about, monsters and werewolves and demons and all that stuff and conspiracies. We're trying to do a little bit more. This was a national disaster that happened in their country, and look at the mutations and the stuff, the repercussions of what could happen. It's just nuclear waste is not nuclear power altogether. I have my opinions on. So it does it helps I guess in Europe they use a lot of it for their version of electricity, but there's always bad things could happen, and Chernobyl is one of them, and that could be the effect. So I think we can go other ways, like with wind power and with electricity altogether. So that's just my opinion, but I don't want to get into that. That's a whole nother story, but that's all I got to say about James on that one.
And nuclear power is really great until it's not. And when it's not, it lasts a long time. That's the only problem. As far as the wind and solar and all that jazz, man, I'm all for it, but the problem always remains, and this is what all the tree huggers and hippies don't understand. The problem always remains with these green energies. And don't get me wrong, like I said, 100% for it, man. If you can run your town on wind or solar or, hydroelectric, great. That is awesome. We should be doing as much of that as humanly possible. The more energy, the better. But the problem is you can't get rid of fossil fuels because until you have some sort of green energy that is capable of powering a cargo plane or a cargo ship, you're never going to get off of gas. It's just never going to happen. You're not going to get off of oil if you cannot power a cargo plane or a cargo ship, because the world economies would stop. And that's the hurdle that has to be overcome. You can't do it on electricity. It's not powerful enough. You can't do it on wind power, solar power, any of that yet. We don't have that capability yet. Once you get there, then you're going to solve the problem, and I'm all for it. You know, I'm not against oil. I think oil's fine. You know, I don't buy into the global warming nonsense anyway, but that's a whole nother episode we can do sometime. But I'm all for every single form of energy we can possibly have. The more the better. That helps the economy go. That helps everybody have a better life. That's wonderful. Can we do it cleaner? Can we do it more responsibly? Always. No matter how good we are, we can always be better. That's the way I look at it. I love nature. I live out in nature. I want a clean environment. If we can possibly have it, I want it to be as clean as possible. But you're just not going to, it's not realistic to think that you're going to get rid of oil and have this kumbaya green movement that's nonsense, really, because it doesn't work. You know, you can do some solar, you can do some hydroelectric, you can do some wind power, and that helps, and that's great, and I'm all for it. And if you can figure out a way to run everything that needs run without oil, I'm there, man. I'm backing you 100%. I'm all for it. But until that day, we have to be realistic. You know, one thing I always thought would be a smart idea, see, we burn coal to create electricity. So when you have these electric cars, everybody thinks, hey, I got an electric car, man. I'm green. I'm helping the environment. Well, not really, because where the hell do you think that electricity comes from? You're burning coal to produce the electricity that goes to the wall socket you plug your car into. So you're still polluting the environment either way you go. You just don't realize it. You know, until you have a solar-powered car, you're not going to have an actual green car. Your car still sucks. It's still killing the planet as you think it is. It's no different. You're still burning coal. And they say clean coal. Don't believe that garbage. Coal is dirty as hell. Even quote-unquote clean coal is dirty as hell. That's just the honest-to-God truth. I'm from a coal state. I know. It's dirty. But it's what we do. I always thought a great idea, and anybody that's listening right now to this show, whether you're listening on the radio or whether you're listening to a replay on YouTube, if you're a scientist or if you're one of these green energy people that actually work on this stuff, feel free to steal this idea. 100% free. It's yours if you want it. If you can make it work, God bless you. Here's a great idea. We have tons of garbage, especially in my country of America. We make so much garbage. What do we do with all this garbage? Well, a lot of times it goes into landfills and gets buried, and a lot of people dump it in the ocean, which isn't cool at all. You don't dump it in the ocean. That's terrible to do. But we have all this garbage. So one thing I thought would be easy to do with all this garbage is to burn it, right? So you're getting rid of it. So it's not piling up everywhere. Well, while you're burning it, why not burn it and use it to heat giant things of water? Use that steam to turn turbines and create electricity instead of burning coal to do that. That's essentially what you're doing when you're making electricity, is you're burning coal to turn turbines to create electricity. Why not burn our garbage instead of burning coal to turn those turbines or to make the electricity? You get rid of the garbage. The earth is cleaner. I mean, you still got the burning garbage. That sucks, but you're burning coal, so what's the difference? But you burn up all the garbage, so the garbage isn't around anymore to get in the way. And you're creating electricity that you can use, which is great. And it should be cheaper, I would think, because it's garbage. I'm sure you can get garbage real cheap. You could just pass some laws that that's where they got to take the garbage instead of the plant, so that they can burn it for electricity. And there you go. Because nobody's going to care. I mean, who wants the garbage? Nobody wants the garbage. That's why we have dumps. So burn the garbage, turn the turbines, create the electricity, power the cars, power everything you can power, and start working on that problem of cargo ships and cargo planes. You figure that out, and you might just save the planet. That's a little tip for all my green friends out there. But with that being said, we are just about out of time, so I'm going to throw it back over to Old Boy so we can do his shout-outs.
Thank you, brother. I want to thank everybody for listening to us on Parax Radio. I love you guys. Remember, if you want to listen to all our old and new episodes, go on James Hershey's YouTube page. He'll tell you where to go. We have merchandise, shirts. You already know, guys. Whenever you want to order something, just go on this. He'll tell you where to go on that. And you can get whatever you want: shirts, clothes, leggings. They have leggings. They have cups. I have a couple people who bought cups, shirts. I think they even make iPhone and cases and other stuff we have. He can tell you. You can go on. He'll let you know after I'm done blabbling. Sorry, guys, but I want to thank every one of you guys. And just to let you know, we've done a couple things. It might be aired down the near future, in the near future on TV. So, especially the thing I did out here, and you guys, it hopefully gets picked up so you guys can see what we did. It was really a great show with Shadow's Pit. So I hope you guys check that out one day whenever it comes out. I hope everybody has a good night. Blessed be Misfits, Sugar Ladies, Monster Lovers, and Demon Hunters. I love you. Good night.
The YouTube channel is youtube.com/James Hershey Jr. Please go there, subscribe, and watch the videos to your heart content. There are hundreds of videos on that channel. If you go to the main home screen, you just got to click the videos tab, and it'll take you to the videos. I've had people say, well, where are your videos? We just click on the videos tab, and it'll take you right to them. There's hundreds of them. Every single episode of Staring into the Abyss we've ever done is there. Every episode of our TV show, Tales from the Abyss, is there. We've got all kinds of other paranormal videos there that we've done, evidence videos. I do a paranormal news show that's on there now. There's a bunch of content there for you guys to watch. It's 100% free, and it's there for your enjoyment, so please enjoy it. The merchandise store, if you want merch, it is teespring.com/stores/staring into the abyss. That's teespring.com/stores with an S on the end /staring into the abyss. That's where all the merch is. Thank you guys for all of your love and all your support. Thank you for all of the comments and all of the messages and emails and all that stuff. I was telling old boy right before we went on, I haven't checked them today because I've been busy. I had over 333 messages just on the Facebook messages. And then I had like 200 and some Twitter messages, and I don't even know how many emails. I'm afraid to check that. I appreciate that. Thank you. I will read them all. I promise you. It takes a little while to go through them. There's a lot. And that's almost a daily kind of thing that comes in. So it might take me a little while to get it read and to answer your questions or to do a show on the topic that you're requesting, but we will get to it. I promise you that. I do read every single one of them. It just takes a long time to get through them because there's a whole lot of you lovely, lovely people. And I greatly appreciate every one of you. And thank you very much from the bottom of my heart. Until I speak to you again, love many, trust few, and do harm to none. God loves you, and so do we. Bye-bye.